Oh man. Ah, dude, John, you look exactly the same. Holy shit.
The same as what?
The same as I saw you 17 years ago. You have not changed a single bit, man.
That's good.
That's good.
Glad to hear it. My
It's the
wife
Marine
would,
Corps. Keeps us
my
young.
wife would argue with you, but I appreciate the compliment.
You're welcome, sir. Anything for a friend and a fellow 3-8 warrior.
All right, you done?
Yeah, I'm done. I'm done kissing his ass right now.
All right, I just want to thank everyone back. It's been a while since we done a show. 2 weeks ago, I was with my Navy buddies. We had a little reunion last weekend. Chaps was
5-year reunion for
his reunion.
me and my wife, and we were in Chicago.
Yeah, right. That's right. So got a lot to talk about. And this is actually our first live show we've done in forever.
A long time.
Sometimes we do live shows here and there. Sometimes mostly it's recording. But before we get started, I want to thank everyone for supporting us. Anybody who has bought the book, From Sailor to Backyard Cook, we appreciate it. It's not just a cookbook. There's some awesome quotes in here, from some past guests from TSP. It's a very emotional book. So if you're buying this and you think it's a regular cookbook,
It's not.
It's not. There's cuss words in here. There's some crazy stories in here. Some great stories of survival. And what I do at the funds for this goes to a nonprofit that I started, and we send veterans and first responders to sporting events. We try to send them with a mentor, so they have someone to talk to for the night, and the evening is completely free for them. They don't pay for anything. We take care of everything. It's our little way of giving back. It's our way of trying to stop the epidemic of veteran suicide. It's just what we do, and that's what our show is all about. We talk about life before, during, and after, and veteran mental health, and all kinds of stuff. We get into all kinds of stuff here, except politics.
Except politics. No politics. Nope. Not even allowed.
I appreciate no politics.
Yeah, we try not to do politics. Yeah. Politics is, you alienate half of your audience when you do that. So I don't want to get into that. I don't want to be the next Bud Light.
Okay. Come on, man. You just said it. Just stop it. Stop.
Oh, yeah. Okay, stop. I won't even talk about Mitch McConnell freezing at his podium.
All right. Stay easy, man. Come on.
I'm just kidding.
Damn, freak.
We don't get it. All right. So also Minutes Wisely in the nonprofit local barbecue joint stepped up big time for us. You want to talk about that for a second, chaps?
Yeah, September 11th, we're having a veterans barbecue bash at Single Tree Barbecue. Charlie Eblin, the owner, operator, fellow veteran, he asked Fleek and I was like, hey, we need to do a local fundraiser for a nonprofit. Minutes Wisely, boom, came right up. And it's going to be awesome. We're going to have an 80s band, and it's going to be amazing. The Eventbrite is out. We'll send it out to everybody. Buy a ticket, come out, and have some fun.
Yes. I can actually drop it in the show.
We can.
Comments here in a few. Yeah, so we really appreciate Charlie helping us out. Charlie's also a veteran, Army veteran. He was on a show a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
A great guy, and we really appreciate his help. So, and you had another event coming up too, right?
Yeah, it's Operation Stand Down. August 24th, they're having a veteran meetup at the same place, Single Tree Barbecue. Starts at 5. It should be fun. Bring Marine Corps League, DVA, DAV, all the nonprofits, all the veteran organizations around. They can come and hang out and meet other veterans. And I've been to a couple, and they're fun. They're a lot of fun. No fighting, no cursing.
That's gonna be hard to do.
It's not like it's not like the Platinum Club outside of Camp Lejeune. Okay, it's gonna be nice. And John is smiling about that because he knows exactly what I'm talking about.
A regular hangout for some of the Marines.
Well,
weapons company, definitely.
All right. So, I'm not saying this. I'm not saying this just because Charlie's hooking us up in a big way, but I had his chicken wings there 2 weekends ago, and
They're
literally
amazing.
the best chicken wings I've ever had in the state of Tennessee. They're
Definitely.
awesome.
Way
They're
better
great.
than Hooters. Way better than Toots, and I'll say that.
Oh,
And I'll stand by that.
yeah. I'm not impressed with Toots' food at all.
Neither am I.
There's another barbecue joint in Murfreesboro. They blow him away too. Slick Pig.
Oh, Slick Pig, yeah.
Yeah, but they're great. He's got great food there. He's got a kick-ass smoker out in front of his
Yes, he
building.
does. But let's
Thing is
stop talking
massive.
about barbecue. Let's get to Mr.
Yeah,
John
you want to introduce
Warren.
them there, chaps?
No. Oh, John. John, I haven't seen you in 17 years, and I knew you as a lieutenant. Is that correct? 05, 06, 07?
Yeah, I got to the unit in 05.
So you went to Carmel with us, Ramadi, and the 22nd MEU?
No, just Ramadi and the MEU.
Okay, just Ramadi and the MEU. Good times. Well, sort of.
I missed.
What company were you?
Lima. First deployment to Ramadi was Lima. I claim Lima.
I knew you were with Lima Company.
They moved me to 81s and Weapons Company against my will for the 2-2 MEU, but I consider myself a Lima Company guy.
Hoorah. Hey, I love the Lima guys. I know Ryan Wheeler. He was Lima, and then he went to State Platoon. He was my bunkmate. He was in boot camp. I miss that guy so much, man. Damn. But sorry, segue. John, this is your show. Tell us where you're from, why you joined the best military branch of service in the world. A couple maybe cool stories and what you're doing now, and talk about your book, obviously.
Sure. So John Warren, I live in Greenville, South Carolina. That's where I grew up. Very patriotic family. Sands of Iwo Jima was always my favorite movie growing up.
Nice.
You could always see it, like every Sunday on TBS, right? That was the rerun. Went in, was actually recruited by all of the basketball coaches at all the academies and turned them down because I did not want to go into the military. And then 9/11 happened and everything changed, and went in shortly after 9/11, went to OCS 10 weeks, then TBS. Loved TBS. It was an unbelievable fun time being right there in DC. And then went to infantry officer course for about 3.5 months.
Yep.
I tell everyone that I would gladly go back to Ramadi, Iraq, and do full combat, but there is no way you could get me to go back to IOC. It was the best training in the world, but definitely would never want to go back there. It was worse than combat. It's a great way for the Marine Corps to make you want to go to combat is graduate IOC. So
that's funny.
I'm definitely not exaggerating on that. Came out and went to Lima Company 3-8, was just extremely blessed. I think probably didn't appreciate what an amazing company staff we had, from senior officers, senior enlisted, when I got there, because I had nothing to compare it to. But we just had an amazing company commander, amazing first sergeant. My company gunnery sergeant, John Thompson, was on his ninth deployment with Combat Action RIP. And went there, had the best advice ever, which was, hey, recognize that you're a lieutenant that knows nothing, and keep your mouth shut rather than confirming to everyone that you know nothing. So that was some good advice. And trained up with 1st Platoon. Lima Company had gotten back from Fallujah, so they were a very salty company, very experienced. Before that, they had gone to Haiti on another combat deployment. So I had the ultimate respect for all those guys, and went in, trained for about 4 months, and then deployed to Ramadi, Iraq. So Ramadi was everything. Ramadi was everything I wanted it to be. I loved Ramadi. Wouldn't trade it for any other 7 months time period in my life. Only drawback of Ramadi were the casualties. I think we took 18 killed in the battalion.
Wow.
My platoon earned 1/3 Purple Hearts. We lost 2 in Lima Company, 2 amazing Marines, Tomsey and Warndorf.
Yeah.
I just think the way Lima Company fought Ramadi was really special, and we did everything for a reason, and we thought outside of the box. and we came up with real counterinsurgency tactics to make a real impact in Ramadi. And at the time, it was very controversial. We took a lot of heat from our fellow companies who thought we were fighting incorrectly. They called us Muj lovers. We did a census. We tried to develop human intelligence sources, but ultimately our way worked, and our sector was 90% clean of attacks by the time we left, and we kept taking other people's area of operations because our way was successful. So I learned a lot from Ramadi. It was the most impactful time for me. Just have the ultimate respect for my Marines. What a 17 to 19-year-old Marine can do in combat is just unbelievable. I mean, you don't really believe it going over. You say, how can these guys do this and that? And then they just keep achieving more and more. Their ability to endure misery, suffering. I think, counterinsurgency is such a tough combat environment because you got to treat the population so well. You got to hand out soccer balls and
Beanie Babies. Don't forget Beanie Babies.
Yeah, and hand out candy and be nice to the kids. And then all of a sudden, you get an RPG flying at you and you got to go kinetic. And then you got to immediately turn it back off when the combat ceases and go back to treating the population well. So the Marines performed so well. I really believe that the NCO core of the Marine Corps is the heart and soul of the Marines. That's what being a Marine is all about, is being a squad leader, in my opinion, especially at counterinsurgency level. But came back, got moved to 81s. They said that's where generals were made. I said, hey, I've got one more deployment in me, so just keep me in Lima Company. But they moved me to weapons, and then we went on the 22 Mu, which was just a huge disappointment. We didn't do anything.
Nothing.
It was a waste. I think at one point we were on the ship 63 straight days.
We were. God.
It was terrible. Just a wasted opportunity because I'd learned so much from Ramadi. I'd trained my platoon the way, I thought they needed to be trained. And we were told we were going to go to Afghanistan, and then SecDef and CENTCOM commander shot that down because it might signal, they said it might signal that we were losing in Afghanistan. Fast forward, to Biden surrendering Afghanistan, but don't want to get into politics.
Right.
But came out of the Marine Corps and faced what a lot of veterans face. I had just gotten married, and everyone said, hey, we really appreciate your service, but we're not going to hire you because we don't think you have any skill sets. So ultimately did a full search of what I wanted to do, what industry. Got some amazing advice from a Navy SEAL telling me to go into real estate. I'd flipped a couple homes prior to going into the Marine Corps. And ultimately, I started a company called Lima One Capital, and we did lending to real estate investors and home builders. And this was right after the financial crisis of 2009. And, just got lucky on timing. Was very blessed by that, and started a company that did lending to real estate investors. My second hire, he would have been my first, but I couldn't afford him, was John Thompson. And, John was a retired master sergeant. Again, he was my company gunnery sergeant in Iraq, and he became COO and co-founder. And we just built that thing with Marine values and Marine precision and Marine operations and execution. And ultimately, Lima One right now is over 300 people, 300 employees. We hired a ton of veterans. We lend, and, I sold the company in 2019, but before I did, we were a multi-billion-dollar originator. Wow. We built it into one of the nation's largest lenders for real estate investors, lends in 44 states. And we're the fastest growing company in our state. And it was just an amazing ride. We doubled every year. But the most important thing, I learned from that was Marine Corps values matter the most. And we hired employees based on that. And we were ultimately very, very successful. We doubled every year. And it was just an amazing run, and sold that. And I stepped away from that in 2018, stepped down as CEO, and decided to run for governor of South Carolina. came out of nowhere from 0% in the polls, got in late. 3 months later, I was winning, made it to the Republican runoff, and lost by 3 points in the runoff after Trump endorsed the incumbent who had endorsed him for the presidential race. So started another company in 2021, which was Gem Mining, which is a Bitcoin miner, heavily involved in politics still, but also doing that on the side. And John Thompson, again, is COO. My CFO is a former Marine. So we just kind of replicate what works. And, for me, it's all about core values and core competencies. I could care less about industry experience. I think that's one of the worst decisions that companies make, is not hiring people, especially veterans, because they don't have any company experience. I said, hey, do you guys respect and think the Marine Corps is a great fighting organization? Oh, absolutely. They're awesome. I said, if the Marine Corps hired based on your criteria, which is all this industry experience, there wouldn't be any Marines, because no one's seen combat before you go in and get trained. So, try to be involved in helping veterans acclimate to the civilian world. And then July 11th, we just released our new book, Lead Like a Marine, published by HarperCollins. It debuted top 25 of national bestsellers. And in that story, we tell our story in Ramadi through Lima One Capital to Gem Mining, and really 9 leadership principles that really made us successful. And we tell a lot of, one of the things that we say in the book was our rise to success was anything but instant. It was a grind. It's a story about perseverance and grit and core values. And we share a lot of amazing stories from Ramadi. We tell a lot of stories from business and the lessons we learned along the way. And I guess that's me in a nutshell. I'm married to an amazing wife. I tell everyone she was my first angel investor, because she had a steady job when I started the company. I had no income, and she supported us for about 2 years before I had any income. And we have 3 amazing kids, 2 boys and a girl, 7.5, 5, and 4. So just family life is amazing, and very happy.
And you live in Greenville.
I'm back in Greenville.
Do you know who else lives in Greenville, South Carolina?
You got to tell me.
Colonel Matthew G. Sinclair and Melissa live in Greenville, South Carolina.
I've heard that.
He's a yoga instructor. My wife and I, we visit with them very often, and we actually have to go to Greenville, and would love to visit him, and we can visit you guys too. I would love it. I hear Greenville is up and coming and becoming a beautiful town.
Yeah, Greenville's an amazing place. It's changed a ton since I was a kid. Downtown is just unbelievable, built around an amazing river. And the one place you will not find me is in a yoga studio.
Okay, good to go. Mental note. Got it. Now, John, I was looking at your bio. Actually, I had to refresh myself. You went to WNL.
I did.
Nice, good school.
When I checked into the Marine Corps, Colonel Neary was
Colonel
battalion commander. I didn't know where he had gone. He goes, "Where'd you go to school?" I said, "Sir, I went to a little school in Virginia." He goes, "Which one?" I said, "School called Washington and Lee." And he goes, I bet you can't throw a grenade, but I bet you could build one." And I said, "Oh, you must be a VM grad, sir." And he was. So
yes, class of 1989, General 1-star Neary. I guess he retired, right? He retired a couple years ago.
Retirement might be that might be the official cause.
It's retired. Yes, I know. I'm trying to be nice. A lot of
it's kind of like MacArthur was retired.
Yeah. Well, it's just when I mention his name on my Facebook, I don't get a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we say it in the book. He was a terrible battalion commander. He had no clue of what was going on in Ramadi. He had no control over his company commanders.
What's that? What's that?
And how did he make it so high up?
Because I think this is one of the problems that I see in the military right now. We have, you know, one of the guys that I like listening to a lot. His name's Thomas Ricks. He's kind of controversial. He wrote Making the Core, wrote Fiasco and The Gamble. He also wrote a book called The Generals, and his argument is the American military today is just this unbelievable Hulk. It's unbelievable fighting force, except it has no head because it is managed and led by incompetent generals. And there are exceptions to that, like General Mattis, General Petraeus. Yep. But overall, the American military, something happens, it institutionalizes the higher ups, and they can't think critically, and it's just poorly led, poorly run.
And so, with that said, did you know Lieutenant Colonel Scheller?
I did not.
What are your thoughts?
What are your thoughts about how he went about his exit out of the Marine Corps?
I don't know Scheller, so I'm not sure what you're referring to.
How he went public, and
he was calling out his higher ups.
He literally called out everybody all the way to the top, and basically forced them out of the Marine Corps. So I was just curious.
Yeah, I mean, just look at who the chairman and the Joint Chiefs have been lately. They're all weak individuals. They're people that can't pose political threats to the president. Look at how we fought Iraq. Look at how we fought Afghanistan. I mean, these people lied to us. The civilians, like the senators, they deserve a lot of the blame for what went on there. But also the generals, they deserve as much or more blame. They lied to us for 2 decades, right? Like, hey, how's the Afghan army doing? Oh, it's amazing. It's one of the best fighting forces out there, right? 58 minutes after the Taliban attacked them, they were finished.
Yeah, they folded.
So, one of the things that Thomas Ricks talks about in The Generals is, when was the last time a division or higher up commander was relieved due to combat ineffectiveness? Do you guys want to take a guess at that?
I'm going to say maybe Vietnam. I don't know.
1971. So you think about the debacles. You think about the debacles that have transpired since 1971, and not one of them were relieved for that. So there's no accountability in the military. Part of it's the problem with, incompetent civilian leaders, but it's definitely a problem.
Yeah,
man.
So as you can see, I'm not opinionated at all. I'm very afraid to upset people.
Yeah,
John, you're not going to get NJ. Well, actually, you're an officer. You can't get NJP'd. Oh, can you? Do officers get NJP'd? I know I did.
I guess technically they can get NJP'd, but again, right? Like,
Sergeant Major Guzman NJP'd me in 2005 for drinking in Iraq.
That's a name I haven't heard for a while.
I know he lives in Tampa. I guess he texts me every once in a while with like an oorah and I miss you, devil dog, and I'm like, dude, you NJP'd the shit out of me. I went back to Lance Corporal twice and PFC twice.
That was your fault.
It was, but I got caught. I got caught. But yeah, John, I just, I know you had some great leaders in Lima Company. Remind me, who was the first sergeant in Lima in 2006?
It's Marty Fenton.
Oh, okay, that's right.
Yeah, first Sergeant Fenton, he became Sergeant Major.
Okay.
I always liked the guy, but I didn't know what an amazing first sergeant he was until I got my second first sergeant, and then had something to compare him to. And I will say that First Sergeant Fenton, now Sergeant Major Fenton, retired. He was just an amazing Marine. He knew his role. He really cared about the Marines, and he was amazing. Barella was our CO.
Barella, yeah.
He's the most belligerent person I've ever met in my life, but he was unbelievable. Just a strategy of coming up with counterinsurgency tactics, and then he and John Thompson, I call him Top, they came back after Ramadi and wrote the Marine Corps counterinsurgency manual based on what we did in Ramadi. And then we had Jason Clark, who was XO.
Oh
He,
yeah.
he was a prior enlisted. That guy was the ultimate professional and just an
I heard good things about him.
amazing mentor. You know, I tell this story often, and we wrote about it in the book. But one time, we had checked into the units, and we were 3 brand new lieutenants, and we had gotten back from a week in the field, and Clark came to us and said, "Hey, once your platoon's weapons are clean, you're good to go for the weekend. You got libo." And we were like ecstatic, right? It's going to be a 3-day weekend. So I pass off to my platoon sergeant, "Hey, clean weapons and we're out." 45 minutes later. Now, how long should it take a platoon to clean weapons? Like 2 hours? 45 minutes later, he says, "Sir, we're good to go. Weapons are clean." I was like, "Roger that." I did not inspect them. I just went to Lieutenant Clark and I said, "Hey, the weapons are clean." And then about 20 minutes later, he vanished. And about 20 minutes later, he came back and was like, "I want to see all the platoon commanders."
Oh,
And I thought he was going to secure us. And I got lit up like I have never been lit up before. The weapons were utterly disgusting, and I failed to supervise. And he threatened to fire us, said he would fire us if he was CO. But ultimately, he was right and we were wrong. And the thing that I remember most about that story, I literally thought, I'm like, holy cow, I'm in the fleet for a week and I'm about to get fired. How am I going to explain this to my parents? But, about 20 minutes after we secured the company, after they had cleaned their weapons, he called the platoon commanders together again. And I thought, here we go again for round 2, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, "All right, who's driving to the O Club for lunch?" And what I really took away from that was, hey, you can light someone up, you can hold them accountable. It's a professional way of doing it. It's not personal. But once it's over, it's over. And then we all go back. And, that was something that really impacted me even today. And I think about that. And I love Jason Clark. I still am close with him. He's up in Chapel Hill now. But, we just had great leadership at the company level.
Were you friends with Colonel McClam?
So Captain McClam was our IOC. He was an IOC instructor.
Okay.
Super articulate. Had high respect for him. And then I think he showed. Did he? I think he showed up.
He
right
was India
before
Company
Ramadi.
CO. Yep.
Well, he showed up.
Oh
right
yeah, before that.
Ramadi, and then I think he was S3 Alpha.
And then he became RCO in 2007. Now he's the commanding officer at TBS.
Yeah. So you go places when you're the commanding officer at TBS.
I saw him a couple months ago when I did a wedding in Virginia, and he took me out for burgers, me and my wife, and it was really good to see him. I miss him, and I miss Colonel Harvey, who actually he's going to retire in a couple months. I think 3 or 4. He's over in Japan right now.
I didn't know he was still in. So Captain Harvey was my CO at Weapons Company.
Okay, Captain Harvey was our CO in Ramadi. Great. He was at my son's funeral when my son died. When I got back from Ramadi, he was only like 33 hours old. But Captain Harvey, he came up to New Jersey for my first wife, and we buried my son, and he was there. And I have a lot of respect for him and everybody from 3-8 India, Weapons, Lima, Kilo, headquarters. Yeah, a little bit for headquarters. Just kidding.
Hey, there's no one I love more than Kevin Zimmerman, who is the JAG.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow, I haven't heard of that name in a long time.
He protected us. I'm very close with him, and I'm also close with Doc. So stay in contact with all those guys.
We actually we have a 3-8 India reunion next week in Altamont, Tennessee. So
I'm
Do you like me
jealous.
to pat
I hear about all these reunions, but I've literally never had any
enough time to
reunion
do it?
at any level.
Hey, if you get time, talk to Bart Skiba. He is the weapons company POC for 38oifoef.org. It's our it's a nonprofit that he started, and we basically help out all veterans with bills and car payments and stuff like that. But talk to Bart. Their weapons company reunion is usually 50 or 60 strong. It's usually like the highlight of the year. So if you still, if you still remember Bart, give him a call.
Sounds good.
Fleek, you got any?
Yes.
Any?
Yeah, I was just curious, like, what do you think is the most important thing that civilians should know about military?
Okay, so I'm
Veterans.
about to really go off the rails here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what I'm going to say is probably controversial, but we talk about it in the book. PTSD, okay? PTSD is very serious for
Yes.
those that suffer from it, okay? And we need to give those guys and females all the help they need to overcome it. However, PTSD is the most overblown illness that exists in society today, at least for veterans. The numbers that they talk about with veterans suffering from PTSD, it is a larger number than the people that saw combat. Okay. You can't have PTSD, in my opinion, unless you saw real combat. Now, to me, what a much larger, broader problem is, and where you're seeing the suicides, is the civilian world does not respect what the military brings to civilian society, so they don't hire them for jobs. So what happens is you have all these men and women who are literally leading combat patrols, impacting U.S. foreign policy, in control and managing millions and millions of dollars of equipment, leading troops in combat, and then they get back and they can't find any quality career. And I don't use the word job, I use career. Like, yes, they can find a job stacking stuff at Walmart, but they're so much more capable of that. And what happens is they have, the military, especially the Marine Corps, does an unbelievable job of making our calling to be in the Marines almost religious, right? Like, that is our higher purpose while we're in the Marine Corps. And when you leave that and you don't have your fire team, you don't have your squad, you're back to civilians who don't really understand what you went through in combat. And on top of it, you have no purpose. That's when the veterans start losing hope. And in my opinion, that is what causes all of the suicides. And that, to me, it's an important distinction to make, because I think too often civilians think that veterans are broken, right?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, oh, everyone has PTSD, you're broken. Let us give you $25,000 tax-free a year to stay at home. That is the worst possible thing. Or, hey, go to the VA and let the VA just dope you up with meds,
Yeah.
right? Like, I hear that all the time from my Marines. That's the solution if you go to the VA. So I think what we talk about is the vast majority of veterans, especially combat veterans, they have what Mattis calls post-traumatic growth, not PTSD. And
Yeah.
I can tell
Nice.
you
Well
that
said.
what we went through in Ramadi, fighting a counterinsurgency, that was the basis and the foundation of why Lima One Capital was so successful. I took so many lessons, so many values from that experience, and built a company around it. And I can tell you, literally, we sat in front of, boardrooms in front of billionaires. They had nothing on us. Okay. I mean, like, when it really comes to a heart of knowing where you stand, they felt inferior to us because they knew we had combat and they didn't. And I really believe that post-traumatic growth is how most people leave the Marines or other services as opposed to the PTSD.
Yeah, that's a great perspective.
No, that is.
With that said, how do you get a 19-year-old kid ready for something like Ramadi?
I think it is extreme. I think it's two things. I think what the Marine Corps does so well, or did, I cannot tell you that they're still doing it right now, because I think the Pentagon is more concerned with, wokeness and feelings and
Yeah.
Yep.
and all these different things that don't matter in combat. But when I was in the Marine Corps did an amazing job of teaching you the values of the Marine Corps: honor, courage, and commitment, what that meant, and giving you a standard of what to live up to. I mean, for me, I grew up with the World War II veterans being my grandparents. Both served in the Pacific. One drove Marines ashore in Navy ships at places like Okinawa. The other was in a B-24 bomber squadron. I had the utmost respect for them, but they were older, and you just kind of looked at them in awe, right?
Yeah.
But my parents' generation was the Vietnam generation. And I've just gotten to know so many of those amazing men that served in Vietnam, and I just have the ultimate respect for them. And I think in the Marine Corps, you are taught the legacy of the Corps.
Yep.
And the standards and the people you got to live up to. And that's the first thing. And then, the second thing is hard training. I mean, I talked about IOC, and I'm literally not kidding when I said combat was easier than IOC. IOC was miserable. You're sleep deprived. You're hazed. You're gassed. You're starved. Like, everything that could happen to you other than like serious physical wounds happened at IOC, and it prepared you so well for combat. And I'm afraid that we're getting away from that. I mean, I even saw it when we came back from Ramadi, where, some of my Marines, one of whom ends up winning the Navy Cross, was NJP'd for hazing. Ouellette. We end the book talking about Ouellette, who won the Navy Cross, lost both his legs, called on his own casualty evacuation in Nowzad district of Afghanistan, repelled 50 to 100 Taliban fighters, called on air support while he was bleeding out. But he's punished for hazing, which in my opinion was not hazing at all. It was tough training. And, how you prepare people for combat is tough training.
My sergeant in Marine Corps squad, Jeff Stockton, he did that same stuff. I was 26, and I wear a CAX, and I went outside my left lateral limit by like an inch, and he grabs me by the yoke and he throws me down Machine Gun Hill, and I'm ammo bitch for the rest of the day. And that right there, and he lives in East Tennessee. I mean, I haven't talked to him in 18 years, but the training he gave me made me into a better Marine. Like Jeff and the machine gun squad. Oh yeah, definitely.
One of the stories we tell in the book about Ouellette, before they went to Afghanistan, he had all of his squad give briefs. They'd have to do research and give briefs on different enemies. So China, North Korea, Taliban, all these different groups. But one day someone briefed on North Korea, and apparently they did like 2,500 jumping jacks a day. And then for the next week, Ouellette said, we can't let our enemy be better than us. So we're doing 2,500 jumping jacks every day. And he would take him on a 4-mile run starting at 4 a.m, which included 2,500 jumping jacks. And they talked
this
about,
guy was a beast, man. This guy. I was scared to. I met Mike a couple times, and I was actually intimidated by him. So he scared the crap out of me.
Yeah. So Mike showed up, right before Ramadi in a boot drop. But the thing that people forget, Mike, he had kind of had this previous life, and he checked into the Marine Corps and enlisted at the age of 24. So he showed up and he was mature. He was salty. He had this chiseled face, and that dude worked out. And I mean, like what you said, I just remember thinking, I don't want to mess with this guy. And I just remember in Ramadi, he almost never said anything. And when I would walk all the posts, just to talk to the Marines, some of the Marines are super chatty. Man, you couldn't get Mike to say anything other than, "I'm good, sir. I'm good, sir." But he was a warrior, and he had his squad trained and prepared for what they faced on that unbelievable day in 2009.
So was he killed in action?
He was killed. I mean, the story is they were out doing a battle damage assessment. A Cobra had come in, shot a missile at a Taliban position. Mike and his squad was dispatched. I think it could be argued it wasn't necessary, but he was dispatched to go get eyes on where that missile hit, the Hellfire missile. And they went out, and the mining by the Taliban was so bad that all of the squads had an engineer lead the patrol and sweep for mines and IEDs. And Mike, unlike most squad leaders who were in the middle of the squad, Mike was point man. He told his guys repeatedly, if someone gets killed, I want it to be me, not you. And there are plenty of fire team leaders that can take control if something happens to me. But they were out, and they thought they had spotted where the Hellfire missile had hit. The engineer saw a pile of rubble, swept it with the mine clearing device, came up negative. He crossed over, no problems. And then Mike tried to cross over, and it detonated. And immediately it severed his left leg, and his right leg would definitely have been amputated, but it was in shambles. And immediately they were ambushed by about 50 to 100 Taliban fighters. Mike had 4 tourniquets put on, 2 on each leg, and immediately put his squad into an L-shaped ambush and repelled the Taliban. His company commander talked about how it was literally like a hand grenade throwing contest. That's how close they were to the enemy. Mike called on his 9 line, which is the Marine Corps casualty report. And one of my Marines, Blair Patton, who was in the Scout Snipers at the time, he was on the radio, and he said in the interview after, he talked about, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mike came on the intercom. He was so calm. And then I heard him call out his kill number, an urgent surgical, double amputee. And he said, how could those 2 things be true? He's so calm, but he is the double amputee. And Mike stayed in the fight. He refused to be evacuated until he was the last man out. He actually talked the Cobras onto a danger close mission. They were too close to fire Hellfires, but he called on the guns to save his Marines. Ultimately, after about an hour, they were evac'd out with QRF, the Quick Reaction Force. And, in typical Marine fashion, they all thought Mike was going to make it, his squad, and they were super close. They were a family, and they were giving Mike a bunch of crap for his situation. And they were literally teasing him, hey, Mike, you're going to make an amazing pirate for Halloween. And talked about, hey, you're going to be Peg Leg Mike, the pirate. And, he was joking with him. He was getting on the casualty evacuation Black Hawk once they were safe. And one of his fire team leaders came up to him, and the last words that Mike spoke to his squad were, tell the guys I'm really proud of them. And his fire team leader said, will do. You're going to be okay. Can't wait to see you. And Mike, unfortunately, died on the bird, but he won the Navy Cross for that. And it's just an unbelievable story. I was actually in New Hampshire last weekend with Mike's sister,
Michelle, right?
Stephanie, and had breakfast with her. And she'd actually never heard the entire story put together until, it's never really been published in that in depth as we did it in the book. And that's how the book ends in Lead Like a Marine. It's called Lead from the Front. And we tell Mike Goulette's story. And it was just amazing I talked to her many times going back to 2009. I couldn't make his funeral because I think it was 2 days before my wedding. But, I've stayed in contact with Stephanie since then, but it was really great to meet her for the first time in person.
I've never really heard that story. I know I ordered your book, and I'm glad you told me that story because I know there's the NCO room is named after him, or it was. I know it's moved somewhere. I think I don't know where it got moved to.
I thought it was the School of Infantry at Camp Geiger.
Yes, yeah, it was. That's the room. Yeah, that was the room.
But in telling that story, what we did, we tracked down all of his squad, and some of those guys. It's amazing the technology now with Zoom, right? You do an interview with everyone all over the country. Some are still in service, like Doc Nolan. He's way high up now, but they told Mike's story, and for a solid month, all I heard was that squad tell that terrible and awesome day at the same time. And it was actually a hard month for me to just go through hearing that over and over and over. But I also think it was almost therapeutic for some of those guys. It's their story as well. It's not just Mike's story because they performed so well. And I think it was great for them for some to tell it for the first time in depth and relive it and kind of get it off their chest.
Okay, like a follow-up question to this, because this is a perfect segue. Do you think the military, the Marine Corps, does a good job of taking the Marines on their way out, discharging, and sending them to civilian life?
I actually think the Marine Corps tries really hard, and I mean that sincerely. They do I can't remember what it's even called. Do you remember?
Steps and taps, sir.
Yeah, that's what it was. But I think the problem is they have people that have never run a business running that, so they don't know how to prepare the Marines when they leave. And I think some of it too, I'll never forget, because even officers have to sit in on that. And I think a lot of the instructors go through the motion. And I'll never forget when the VA representative came in and said, "Hey guys, whenever I stomp my foot, it's really important." And later on, he says, "We cannot verify back injuries," and starts stomping his foot and says, "Hey, if you want to be disabled, all you got to do is say that you have a back injury." And I just, not to get political, but I don't believe in welfare, not because I'm a cruel person, but because I don't think it helps people, right? Like, you may need a handout for a short amount of time to get your feet on the ground, but then you need to transition to a job and keep going. Yeah. And that's the same way I feel about veterans. You can give them $25,000 tax-free, but you're not helping them unless it's temporary, and then you're helping them get a job and transition. So some of the worst cases of veterans that I've seen is the VA gets a hold of them. Look, here's a story. We hired our first underwriter was a Marine. Like, we tried to hire veterans at Lima One. We hired a Marine. He was an aviation mechanic, no college degree, and had unbelievable upward mobility. He was making, I think, $40,000, and he came to us and said, "Hey guys, I got connected to the VA, and the VA, they're going to give me 100% medical retirement. And that really equates to about $27,000 a year. And if I take that, then if I work, I won't get it." Okay. So what he said then was, after you factor in taxes, it's really hard to justify me working if I can get $27,000 handout. So we said, I don't want to say his name, but we said, hey, please don't do that. This is terrible. You've got unbelievable potential at the company. We're doubling every year. He quit his job. His wife worked really hard as a bartender, and he went home and he started playing video games. And for the first 2 weeks, video games were awesome.
Mhm.
And then he needed something else. So he started playing video games and he started drinking alcohol a lot. And then he became an alcoholic. And then his wife gets tired of coming home to that. So she has an affair. He drinks more and more. His family, dissolves. And ultimately, that's oftentimes what I see. And that's not PTSD related. That is VA inflicted. And, those are the stories that we can easily solve, if you had people running these organizations that actually knew what they were doing. So I definitely think the Marine Corps tries, and I do mean that sincerely, but they don't know what they're doing. They're good at waging war. They're not good at being civilians. And we definitely need to do a better job at that. I've heard recently, though, that there are some programs coming out from the Department of Defense that's better, including a apprenticeship. I think it's a 6-month apprenticeship.
Apprenticeship, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And I've actually had like 3 veterans talk about that within the last month and saying it's a great program. So hopefully they can do something better than they were doing when we came out.
So why wouldn't the government take that out of the Marines' hands and like outsource it to contract?
Well, I mean, oftentimes though, these contractors, they're just as bad. Like they don't know what they're doing either. It goes to the lowest bidder, or it goes to Halliburton, who can do everything supposedly.
Right. Yes.
And I think oftentimes they just do a poor job of awarding these contracts to people that actually know what they're doing. It's almost like half the colleges that I deal with, when they talk career services, it's like, hey, have you ever held a job, in the real world? No. Okay, then how are you going to help your college students transition to the real world? You don't know what the real world is about, right? It's like the same thing with a lot of these entrepreneurship centers. And it's like, hey, what company have you started that's grown into a successful business? Oh, none? Then why are you heading up entrepreneurship, right? And that's the same thing it is in the military.
I got you. All right. Well, we're pushing on an hour here. Do you have any inspiring parting words for us?
I just think the inspiring words are, the military, and especially the Marine Corps. I'll speak for the Marine Corps. I think the values that are stressed in the Marine Corps, anyone leaving the Marine Corps, if you hold on to those values, you're going to be so different in a positive way from everyone else in the workforce. And you may get 1,000 no's, but if you got the grit to keep going, you're eventually going to find someone that says yes, and you're going to have such a leg up on everyone out there. It's just amazing, to see what Marines can accomplish and veterans when they're really given the opportunity. So I'll leave you at that.
All right, excellent.
Hey, John, I want to say thank you. And the most poignant thing that I'm going to take away from this, you said a lot of great stuff, but finding a purpose. That last story you told about drinking and the video games, I don't play video games, but I was an alcoholic. I'll be 5 years sober tomorrow. I found a purpose. The VFW, Marine Corps League, Irreverent Warriors, AA, God, my wife, my support system. And now I get to help veterans. Like Fleek, Fleek was my past post commander. I've now been the post commander 2 years in a row now. I'm a VFW state chaplain 4 times in a row. And it's because I love to help people. And I found a purpose. And when you don't have a purpose, you're lost. You don't know where you're going. And
Yes.
that was, I think, the most poignant thing that you said tonight was finding a purpose. And I really appreciate that, what you said. I really do.
Well, I appreciate what you guys are doing. And I think, my wife gets on to me sometimes because she says, "Hey, are you going to help? You're going to do this, you're going to do that." And I said, I'm looking for scale, right? I want to influence the most people. And she goes, if you just started with influencing one person,
Yeah.
that's better than always looking for scale and not helping anybody. So I think
Exactly.
appreciate what you guys are doing.
Thank you, John. Fleek, do you have any saved rounds or anything?
Nope, I'm good, man. I just want to
John,
thank
thank you
John.
from the bottom of my
Thanks
heart.
for everything.
And Fortuna Favit Fortibus.
Yeah.
That's right.
Have a good one. I appreciate
Thank you,
it.
sir.
Thank you for your service too. All right.
Semper
See you
Fi.
guys.